We are only weeks away from the 2022 World Cup, and we still have so many unanswered questions for the U.S. men's national team, particularly a question that we have been discussing for a long time: who is going to play striker? Now, the guy who is the leader in the clubhouse at the moment is number 9 he's actually number 10 for FC Dallas, Jesus Ferreira. The guy's been starting games, but there's a lot of question marks regarding Jesus Ferreira. And those questions, the discourse around Jesus Ferreira had absolute gasoline thrown on it. Whenever Jesus missed a opportunity that could have won a game for FC Dallas way late in stoppage time, it was like the 115th minute or something like that this weekend in a playoff game for FC Dallas. FC Dallas ultimately end up winning that game. Jesus actually has to take a penalty kick at the end of the game in a shootout, and he makes it. He converts his shot. But still, the questions regarding Jesus Ferreira's finishing ability remain one of the main storylines as we head into the World Cup. The issue: we don't have a lot of opportunity to try out other players. We don't have a lot of opportunity to build any type of camaraderie with any other strikers. And there's a couple of guys vying for the position, and time is just flat out running out. So what I want to do right now is talk about the striker position and really add some context to the discussion by going through the strengths and weaknesses from the 4 guys who are really vying for the position. Those are Jesus Ferreira, Josh Sargent, Ricardo Pepi, and Jordan Pefok. I know there's other guys out there in the conversation. I know there's discussion of taking some field players from other positions and putting them at the striker position. So far, we have not seen that from Greg Berhalter, so I'm going with those 4 guys as the main candidates. We're going to run through the list of strengths and weaknesses. I'm not going to make any type of judgment one way or the other on any of these guys, but we're going to discuss that. I'm going to bring in Brad, the co-host for the Yank Report. We're going to hear what he has to say about this discussion. And then we're going to go on to, I think, a bigger question regarding goal scoring and conversion for the national team. I think a more important discussion that I think had some really optimistic things happen today, a few hours before this show happened, whenever Christian Pulisic really put out an electric performance today against Bradford. And Gio Reyna came on for a cameo as well against Hanover in the Pokal and played a really nice game. All that and more on this episode of the Yank Report. What's up? My name is Sam. This is the Yank Report. It is a show about all things American soccer. If you're into that, please hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. You can support the channel directly by becoming a member. There's a join button right at the bottom. Let's start with our pros and cons for the striker discussion. But before we do that, let's hear a word from this week's sponsor. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number 1 source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we have painstakingly put together a list of pros and cons for the strikers in the national team. Before I get to it, I want to bring in Brad Pauly, producer Brad. Brad's going to join the discussion. He is on the ball switching things. Brad, how are you doing right now?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. Long day of soccer watching and producing, but we are fired up, ready to go. And I have a little bit of pep in my step from Ricardo Pepi and from Mr. Christian Pulisic, who was just absolutely electric off the bench. Graham Potter, I think, is taking notice. He said some interesting things this week that I think will bring a smile to USMNT fans' faces.
You're right. And it just sucks whenever we go a week where he doesn't play, man. I mean, he is, we have so many guys playing at so many high-level clubs, and so many guys doing different things, exciting players, exciting youth prospects, but Christian Pulisic's the guy. Whenever he plays well, we are all fired up. And whenever he's not playing well, there's just something missing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I was thinking as I was on my way home from work, what would we rather have? Would we rather have a Christian Pulisic who is starting every match for Chelsea, happy and scoring goals, or would we rather have going into this World Cup, a Christian Pulisic who is getting 30 minutes a game, scoring a goal here or there, and is angry and ready to stick it to the English team on Black Friday. I don't know. I think that both have their merits, but whenever he's coming on the pitch and he's looking like that and he is creating great chances. I mean, that one knuckler that he fired right at the net, I was like, oh my goodness. That's the second week in a row where he's had one that we all just went, if he scored that, the mean Chelsea tweeters would have just, hidden under their desks because they would have nothing to say. Their thumbs would have been broken. They wouldn't have anything to tweet.
It's incredible to me that when it comes to Pulisic, it feels like, and I know this is a striker video and we're just talking about Pulisic, but this is U.S. men's national team and Pulisic comes first, man. You can tell it feels like the first time he receives the ball, what his decision making is whenever he receives that. You could tell right away what kind of game he's going to have. If he looks at that defender and just blows by him like he's not even there, like, this is the Pulisic we came to see.
He's such a confidence player. If he gets that little taste early on, it's going to be a long night for whoever he's playing against. I mean, this is how much of a dork I am. I went down the rabbit hole, watched his highlights when we played England back in, I think it was 2018, and he just toast Trent Alexander-Arnold. I was like, oh my gosh, if he is excited and he's locked in and not throwing his arms up in the air, look out, because he's a dangerous, dangerous man.
All right, we're going to come back to Christian Pulisic, trust me, because I think he kind of wraps up this discussion really well. He puts a bow on it. But let's go through the list of strikers and talk about the pros and cons. I'm going to start with the guy who seems to be the leader in the clubhouse right now. He is Jesus Ferreira. Now, I say he's the leader in the clubhouse all World Cup qualifying long, and even prior to that, we've been waiting for a striker to step up and seize this position. I don't think that we've seen that. I don't think we've still seen that. I don't think Jesus Ferreira has necessarily seized the position. I think he's just been the latest guy, and nobody's taken it from him yet. Nobody has stepped up. But he's not like a guy that just came forth and grabbed the position and made it his own. So I think that's an important thing to say before we jump into it. Now,
Go ahead. Sorry.
The pros for Jesus Ferreira so far. He's had 18 goals this season for FC Dallas. He is the tied for the leading scorer ever in the history of FC Dallas in his first year playing striker, which I think is a fascinating little caveat. This is his first year playing striker, and he went and set the club record for goal, or matched the club record. He also became, I don't know the exact name of the award, but he's the Young Player of the Year in MLS. That was named very recently. Another phenomenal achievement for a 21-year-old player. He is a playmaker at the striker position. We know that prior to him being a striker, he was more in the number 10 playmaker situation. If you look back at a lot of Ricardo Pepi's goals in his big season, Jesus Ferreira was the one setting him up. Jesus Ferreira just has a passing range and I think a soccer IQ that is really unmatched by the other players in the striker position. He is the U.S. men's national team just seems to play better when Jesus Ferreira is on the field. They seem to create more chances. Now that's a double-edged sword for Jesus, and we'll get to that in a second. The team just seems to function better. They create more chances. Better things happen when Jesus is on the field. And last but not least, and I think this is a very important thing whenever it comes to Greg Berhalter, he's a relentless presser. He's a guy that absolutely gets after it on the defensive side of the ball. I recall after one game in the summer, Greg called Jesus a pressing animal. And ever since then, the press has kind of referred to Jesus as a pressing animal because that was just kind of a funny thing to say. So those are the pros for Jesus Ferreira. Brad, do you think I missed anything there?
No, I don't think you're missing anything. I think the main thing is his positioning, and we see that in his XG, and we'll talk about the double-edged sword that is. But that is something that we really do have to take into account, is that he always seems to be in the right place at the right time, which, I mean, it has to be on his day, but whether or not he's going to convert those chances, but we'll get to that in a bit. I think Jesus really does a good job of connecting the midfield to the attack. I think that's something we see. I mean, and I think sometimes he does that a little too much. I mean, I think it was the Japan game, we saw him pretty
Yeah.
much next to Tyler Adams, like right in front of Tyler Adams, picking the ball up and making it go forward. That's a little too much, but that is something that's a really a big asset to his game that not a lot of the other guys do. I mean,
Yeah.
I think his mind for the game and his positioning really does put him in a great, I hate to use this word, but position to take that number 9 role. Now, there are other elements that I'm sure we're going to get to in the con section that kind of negate that point.
Yeah, and you mentioned his positioning whenever it comes to dropping into the midfield and receiving the ball and kind of starting to play that way, which is kind of how Jesus was billed as like this false 9 type striker who could drop in and link up play. But that really requires a certain type of game mode for the US to execute. Whenever it's going well, it's going well. But when we're not playing that style, then it becomes a con. Then it becomes an issue. And I think that's how we'll lead into the cons. The first thing for Jesus, of course, is going to be poor finishing in big moments. I mean, there's no way you can argue about that. Jesus has had some big chances for the U.S. men's national team, and he hasn't put them away. That is the main thing that anybody talks about. If you've been on U.S. men's national team Twitter lately, you'll know that the XG discussion has really dominated things about his ability to create chances and what XG means, whether finishing is a skill or not, all that. And I do want to highlight some of your comments because we're getting some good comments about the discussion. But you can't deny that the man has not finished his chances for the U.S. men's national team in some big moments outside of the Grenada game. He had a goal against Panama. I forget when his other goal came. So his goals that have come for the national team have come against poor competition. Another con for Jesus is going to be his hold-up play, and I think that's his strength, really. And whenever I talk about strength, I mean like his physical strength. He's not going to hold off center backs. He's not going to be a guy that you can reliably just chunk the ball up to, and he's going to win it. He gets knocked off the ball relatively easy. That's never going to be a part of his game. We talked in the pro section that he can drop in and link up play, but if you have a situation like the U.S. had against Japan, where you have Gio, Jesus, and Brennan, and you got 3 players who are all kind of dropping in trying to link up play, you just you're not able to get the ball forward. I think we saw that just really fall apart in that game, and we saw that weakness of Jesus really front and center there. Last thing, it's kind of in line with his weakness of just not being very physically strong. He's not going to win any aerial duels, whether that's in the box, jumping for headers. You're not just going to be able to lump a ball into the box and Jesus can go up there and win it. He's not going to be winning corner kick opportunities, anything like that. And he's not going to be able to do hold up play. He's not going to be a big, strong hold up guy. Is there any other cons that you think fit in the Jesus discussion?
Yeah, and there was one comment I saw that I want to bring in here real quick that I is a point that I want to bring up, and is he choking under pressure? And I think that is an interesting thought because we have seen him do it. We have seen him convert when pressure seems to be off, aka that Grenada game where he scored 4 goals. But then he's mistiming his jumps against Japan, and then he's scuffing one this weekend in Dallas's playoff game. There's no doubt that he has the talent and the knowledge of the game. I mean, the XG speaks for itself, but how much does that converting come down to confidence? And you and I obviously aren't world-class athletes. We're not sitting here going, "Oh, we could score that," but there is that point when you are on the world's biggest stage where you have to have that where 90% of it is knowing that you can do it, because I mean that line is so fine.
It's interesting you say that, knowing that you can do it, because I think one of the things that I think really really paints a lot of people's opinion of Jesus Ferreira is sort of the way that he carries himself and the way that he talks about himself in interviews. I remember during midseason when Jesus was just in electric form for FC Dallas and he was scoring game over game. His coach made a comment when someone said that, Jesus is playing really well for FC Dallas right now. His coach, Nico Estevez, said, and we think he can be much better. We think he has so much more to offer. And whenever I watch him play, it's fascinating to me that he is a DP for FC Dallas. He's their main offensive weapon, not just their main goal threat, but also their main playmaker. He just does so much. But I don't see that he carries himself and steps on the field as if he is that. He doesn't have that kind of, I'll call it DP energy. How about that?
Yeah.
He doesn't have that swagger. He doesn't have that, you see it with the top guys. The way that they step on the field, they're just different.
Yeah, you look at Karim Benzema, you look at
Cristiano Ronaldo,
you look at them and they go like, who do you think you are? I am. That's
exactly Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I mean, we can go down the list of these just super confident goal scorers and super confident just elite players at the top of the level. And I just don't see that in Jesus. And I do wonder if that affects things. I mean, he came out in an interview and revealed that he was seeing a sports psychologist about not scoring goals, that was a big issue for him, and just confidence in general. And I do wonder if like the next chapter of Jesus's career is him kind of accepting how good he is as a player and coming into the game with confidence and carrying that swagger that you see from somebody like Sebastian Druisi or somebody like that, some of the top players in MLS. I think that's the next step, man. And I did put out a tweet about Jesus Ferreira regarding, I think the big thing holding him back right now, or the question mark I have is about his ambition, man. He did an interview with Alexi Lawless in the State of the Union podcast not too long ago, where they asked him about potentially playing in Europe and what his ambitions ultimately are. And he just talked about how much he loved FC Dallas, how much that was his boyhood club, how much he wanted to play there and be better than his dad was. And, he just seems really content playing in Dallas. And I wonder if he does have that ambition to go to Europe and be the best he can possibly be. I wonder about that. I think we got to move on. I think we got to move to the next striker because we can come back to Jesus.
Yes, we can. And to be clear, we are not MLS haters. We love MLS, but there does come a point where there's the Jordan Morris of it all, where Werder Bremen, it was Bremen, right? Was looking at him and he was like, "No, I'm good in Seattle." There comes a point where you got to challenge yourself.
Jermaine Jones got mad at him. Yeah,
yes, because of the dog.
So the next player I want to talk about is Josh Sargent. So Josh Sargent, we know as one of the best youth prospect strikers that the U.S. men's national team has ever produced. The pros when it comes to Josh Sargent, at least in my opinion, he is in electric form for Norwich right now. He is scoring goals. It seems like every other game he's scoring a goal. Just a night and day difference between his form in the Premier League and his form in the Bundesliga right now in the Championship. He's absolutely tearing it up. I think he's our most all-around striker. I think he presents he's strong enough to do hold-up play. He can win balls in the air. He's not an elite player in the air, but he can do it. I think he does do runs in behind. He can combine pretty well in the attack. He can drop in and play that role of sort of the false nine type guy. He can do that as well. And I think his biggest strength probably as a player is his work ethic, is his defensive ability. If you look at his defensive statistics, I mean, they're off the charts for a striker. So whenever it comes to the press, he is absolutely that leading man in the press. We've also seen him, he can run in behind. He kind of has an all-around game for me whenever it comes to the striker situation. Any other pros you want to throw in for Josh Sargent?
He'll occasionally clear a ball off the line with his head going backwards.
That's probably the highlight of his U.S. men's national team career so far, that game against Honduras, where in many ways he saved the U.S. men's national team's Nations League life in that moment. Sargent is still only 22. He's growing into it. That's a good point. I didn't point out that Jesus Ferreira, 21, Josh Sargent, 22. So these are very young players.
Like recently.
Yeah. The cons for Josh Sargent, Of course, he really struggled to score goals in the Bundesliga and was just anemic as well in the EPL. Particularly in the EPL, he had some moments where he had goal scoring opportunities and he just looked about as unconfident a player in front of goal as we've seen. There were some moments where he really could have scored. I mean, he had an open goal at one point for Norwich, and he couldn't get the ball over the line. It was really disappointing. He was really in a low point in his career. So scoring against top level defenses is something that we haven't seen from him. I think a lot of that comes down with his movement. I mean, we talked about Jesus Ferreira's movement in the box and his ability to find positions for goal scoring opportunities. I don't see that as much with Josh Sargent. I think Josh Sargent's career as a striker in the Bundesliga was really defined by not having many chances at all, and not being able to get in positions to score goals. So he had a really dismal goal scoring record. And so much of that comes from chance creation. Currently, he's playing winger a lot for Norwich. I mean, his renaissance as a player came whenever Timu Pukki was injured and he got that opportunity to play striker, and he started scoring goals, but he's kind of back to winger now. So he's not really playing the position. And I think the main con for Josh Sargent at the moment is timing. I wonder what would happen if we started World Cup qualifying right now, if we kind of hit the reset button and we got this version of Josh Sargent to start World Cup qualifying. Would he ultimately come out on top? Because right now we're heading into the World Cup and he hasn't played with the national team in a long time. And I think we saw in that Japan game that, it was good, but it wasn't great. He didn't exactly, win the position in that 45 minutes. Of course, it was not a lot of time, and it was the worst game that the U.S. has played in some time. But at the same time, in international soccer, you're not going to get a lot of opportunities. You got to seize the moment you have. Ricardo Pepi's national team career was launched against Honduras in a game where the U.S. was losing, and it was a terrible performance. And he came in, scored some goals, and would just electrify U.S. men's national team fans. You got to make the most of the moment you have. I wonder if Josh Sargent, if he had a longer runway, if he could win this starting position. But as of right now, it seems like a big risk to make him the starter. But I do think I don't want to make any judgments. But Brad, what do you think about the cons? What do you think about Josh Sargent?
Well, it's Josh Sargent is really interesting because when he was a youth prospect, I can't remember the game, but there was a youth tournament where he was really exploded onto the scene. And
he played in the U17 and the U20 as well. He played in two, and I believe it was the one where he was in the older age group.
I think it was the U20s when he was 17.
Yeah, he was 17. Yeah.
And that led to him going to Bremen, and it's interesting to follow, kind of connect the dots throughout his moves in his career. Because when he went to Bremen were not a good side. He wasn't getting the chances that he needed to score goals and get in good form. And then he goes, and Bremen were in a relegation battle. Then he goes over to Norwich, who had just been promoted and hadn't made a lot of other moves to really solidify themselves to be kind of like a Fulham, how we're seeing them. They've made moves and they are playing as a team to where they're going to be pretty safe. Norwich if I'm remembering correctly, Sargent was one of the only acquisitions that they made in that offseason. So when he went in there, they had
Rashishka as well, his teammate from Bremen. So,
well, they were still in survival mode. Is kind of the point I was trying to make. And when you're in survival mode and you're going to be trying to stay up by the skin of your teeth, you're not going to be put in the best positions. And when they are literally playing him out of position, that's not going to lead to success. And when you miss a few chances here and there, you're just going to be down in the dumps. I think one of the things that's interesting with Josh Sargent, and you bring up that timing, that's interesting, is that he did have this kind of renaissance when Pukki went down. Now, when Pukki went down, he starts scoring goals. And it's kind of that winning cures all. I mean, scoring goals cures all. And then they move him to the left wing, and he's still scoring goals. I don't know how much of that comes down to confidence, but I would be willing to bet it's a lot of it. So I think your point about the timing is interesting, but I think something is worth mentioning is that he played a lot of the youth tournaments with Christian, with Weston and those guys. And I think there is kind of that familiarity there with them to where
I don't know if that's true. I don't think he did. He's 22 and they're 24, 23. I think somebody in the comment section could let us know, but I don't know if
yes,
that's
please.
accurate.
But I don't think, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't feel bad bringing him. I don't think I would start him. I think my starter is, we're going to talk about him later. But I think he's in form. I think you absolutely need to bring him, especially if you're in a pinch and you need to play someone on the wing as well. I think that's something that we should discuss, is that also, if in a pinch, you can play him out of position, and it's a position that he's currently scoring goals in as well.
Yeah, we keep coming back to this discussion around chance creation, and that's an interesting one, and that's really what I think the XG discussion is all about. Is about where does the skill lie for a striker? Is the skill in finishing, putting the ball in the back of the net whenever the chance comes to you, or is the skill in creating chances and getting the more opportunities? And the more opportunities you have, the more opportunities you're going to have to score goals. And I think that's the thing with Sargent that we're seeing, where in the Bundesliga and in the EPL, he just wasn't able to create those chances. Whereas in the championship, he is able to find those chances reliably. With Jesus Ferreira, he seems to be the one that's generating the most chances for the national team. He's just not putting them away. I think your point about the Grenada game with Jesus Ferreira, where he was able to score those goals, he had a lot of chances. If you recall, prior to Jesus scoring a goal against Grenada, the U.S. men's national team Twitter was just roasting him because he had a chance or two early on in that game that he didn't put away. So it's tough. It's tough for Jesus Ferreira because at the moment, everybody is focusing on his every chance that he has. If he makes it, nobody really cares, but if he misses it, then that's a referendum on his goal scoring ability. Whenever you're a player under the microscope like that, and I think Christian Pulisic is like this right now for Chelsea. You know, there's players that kind of come in and out of it. Whenever you're under the microscope like that, soccer is a game where you're going to make mistakes, where everybody makes mistakes. And if everybody's looking for those mistakes in order to make their little highlight reels and create some type of movement against you, you're going to give them that ammo. Like I remember Jesus Ferreira not too long ago in a game leading up to the playoffs, scored two miraculous goals like really late in the game for FC Dallas. One of them was a free kick, and I can't remember exactly how they both went down, but it was pretty crazy. I mean, he came up in a huge moment for his team and took his team from a losing position to a winning position with some phenomenal goals, some goals that showed off really his guile, I think, and his finishing ability. So it's there. There's going to be positives from these players. There's going to be mistakes from these players, and really kind of depending on how you want to view them, you're going to be able to pick and choose. Like I know people are saying, I saw a comment from Christian Pulisic's game today where he pretty much didn't put a step wrong. There was one moment where he gave the ball away at the top of the box, and a lot of people were ripping him for that.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. The one moment in Pulisic's otherwise fantastic game, people are able to pick that out and say, see, that's what I'm talking about. That's who he is. And if you're looking for that in a soccer game, you're always going to be able to find it. It's always going to be there. It's just a matter of kind of what you're looking for. Anything else on Josh Sargent?
Not really. I
think that's a no. Let's move on to Ricardo Pepi. Big strength for Ricardo Pepi. He is going to be the youngest player in this discussion. He is still 19 years old. He is a puppy. He's got so much soccer ahead of him. I think the first thing for Pepi is he's another one of the great pressers. He has a work ethic. He's going to get after it. We've seen, I think that's a big reason why Berhalter took to him so quickly and threw him in the mix. I think he's another all-around player, sort of like Sargent. I really like Pepi's. I wrote it down as dynamic passing. I remember Jake from FIFA America. Not FIFA America, excuse me. Jake from It's Called Soccer put together a video, a scouting report on Ricardo Pepi, and he talked about his wall passing. And it's something you see over and over again whenever Pepi's in the game. It's whenever he's at the top of the box, you can play the ball to his feet, and he has this really nifty ability to like put a ball in behind in someone's path. I think we saw him do it against Mexico. We saw him do it against Costa Rica to good effect. In the last game against Saudi Arabia, we saw that opportunity that was created with Weston McKennie. There was a combination play that between, I think, Dest, Pulisic, and McKennie, and a ball gets played to Pepi's feet. He puts the ball in behind. McKinney's running onto it. Unfortunately, McKennie was just a hair offsides, but it's just another one of those moments where Ricardo, if you play it into his feet and it's on, he has this uncanny ability to play a nice ball that just always catches the defense offsides. It's just a really nice weapon, particularly whenever you have guys like Pulisic, Weah, maybe Anthony Robinson, guys with speed who are looking to get in behind. That's a weapon. Another thing is he's an athlete in transition. That's for sure. We know that he can finish. He scored a ton of goals for FC Dallas in a short amount of time. He's a really exciting player, man. He's a player with so much stand potential, which is why they paid so much money for him. Any other pros for Ricardo Pepi that I missed?
Youthful exuberance. I think I think we are all going to wind up owing a debt to his agent for getting him that loan that he really desperately needed. I mean, everything that you mentioned, his passing, being able to get a ball in behind, and his strength and his pressing ability, we have seen that in the past 2 weeks with goals that he has scored, and we hadn't seen that in 11 months since he went to Augsburg. I mean, we have seen just this change. I mean, his passing ability he played this crazy flick on thing 2 weeks ago that led to him getting a goal when he created something out of nothing at the top of the box. And then this week, he picks the ball up. He presses, and it was around the halfway line. He takes it off the defender, and they're off to the races, and he scores a tap in at the other end. I mean, thank God we're seeing him do this, because this is what we saw him do at FC Dallas. And how can we really believe that this kid is only 19 doing this? And when you're a 19-year-old, you're going to have it's going to be like this. And if he keeps riding like this, he is my starter, because I think Greg will remember the game he came in against Honduras. And when he was hot, he was in form at FC Dallas, and everybody was clamoring. Stu Holden's announcing at halftime that he's going to choose the USMNT over Mexico. And you see him come in, and he does those things. He's doing those things in the Eredivisie right now. And we hadn't seen him do that for 11 months. Now, I mean, is Greg going to go with what he saw in this last camp, which was, I mean, to be fair, Pepi didn't get much service. None of the number 9s got much service. But I think his pressing ability, I mean, we saw it today. The clip has been circling around. I mean, he causes the turnover, makes a good pass, finishes his run, stays on side, and it's an easy tap in. I mean, when you're seeing him do things like that, it's just awesome to see.
Yeah. And I think you bring up another point that I should probably put into the pro section, and that is that Greg Berhalter believes in him, clearly. Yes. I mean, if you look at the last call,
to him.
I mean, if you look at the resume, I mean, the gall of calling up someone like Ricardo Pepi, who's a very young player who just made a loan move, over someone like Jordan Pefok, who's a player who is in form and scoring goals in the Bundesliga, the very league that Pepi just had to leave from because he wasn't able to score those goals. Clearly, it shows that Berhalter has faith in Pepi and believes in him and believes in what he can do. So I think that's another pro, and it's a significant weight in Pepi's favor as we kind of discuss who is going to be the striker for the national team. Now, the con section. And I think the big con is going to be his form and his confidence. I think that's changing right now. But I think certainly while he was at Augsburg, I think we saw a Pepi that, if you forgive me for this pun, he lacked a pep in his step. He lacked whatever the Pepi train, the Pepi movement, just the exuberance, the excitement, all that stuff. He just didn't have it for a while there at Augsburg. And that's a difficult thing considering the timing of when the World Cup is. Another thing I'll say is is chance creation. I think the same as a lot of these other players. When Pepi's in the game, he really needs to get service. You're not seeing him get a lot of chances, whereas other strikers might. I think that's true with Allsberg as well. Whenever you get to that top level, is he able to find those pockets, find those spaces, the movement necessary to get those chances? I don't really see him as a dynamic mover. I'm not usually impressed by him off the ball.
Mhm.
That's what I'll say. And then the last thing is his. I feel like his involvement of the game, of the strikers that I just mentioned, Sargent, Pepi, and Ferreira. I feel like Pepi's like the least likely to really step into the game and try to command the game and try to get involved, try to get touches, try to combine, try to do things. I feel like he really waits for the game to come to him a lot.
Yeah.
I think we saw in the game against Saudi Arabia, the most recent one. I mean, there was really something going on in that left channel with McKinney and Dest and Pulisic, but there really wasn't a lot going on in the right channel at all. And we
Mhm.
didn't really see Pepi just kind of facilitate that much at all. I think, someone like Ferreira or somebody like Sargent's in the game, I think they're getting in the mix. I think they're getting touches. I think they're combining, they're passing, they're trying to bring other players into the game. I don't think you get that with Pepi. Curious about your thoughts on the cons on Ricardo Pepi.
Well, yeah, I do think the big con will be sometimes that lack of wanting to the more wanting the game to come to him. I think that can come back to just having him really rely on what he knows to do best. I think there comes a time where he's going to have to take some ownership and get in the game and not just kind of be, oh gosh, what's the term? I'm not looking for like poacher, but like
Proactive. I mean, he's 19 years old. I think these
yes.
things really come with time. I think
Mhm.
part of what we were talking about with Ferreira as not being a real commanding personality.
Mhm.
I think that might be true of Pepi as well, considering he's 19. He's a really young player.
Mhm.
Maybe he grows into that for sure, but I don't think at the moment that he's really in these games demanding the ball, demanding service, just trying to get involved. It's just
Mhm.
not something we're seeing from him right now.
Yeah, the only 19-year-old, well, he was 17 at the time. The only 17-year-old we've seen have that command and exuberance would be Gio Reyna. I
Well,
think.
Gio Reyna and Yunus Musa at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
Musa. Phew. All right,
Yeah.
let's move on to the last guy. He is a guy that I think a lot of people want to talk about at the moment. I've seen his name quite a few times in the comment section so far. He is
Mhm.
Jordan Pefok. So the pros from Jordan Pefok, I think he's the only striker scoring in an elite league right now. He's scoring regularly for Union Berlin. To be fair, Union Berlin is outscoring their XG at a remarkable rate, and pretty much none of the experts believe that they're going to be able to sustain this. So we might be experiencing kind of a positive blip on the radar, and that might tail off towards the end of the season. But at the moment, he is showing that he can be a reliable presence, a reliable goal scorer in the Bundesliga. He is an elite presence in the air.
Mhm.
I mean, elite in the world. There's not a lot of guys who are center backs, defenders, whatever, who can compete with him. If he wants to win that ball in the air, there's a good chance that he's either going to win it or he's going to put off the other player trying to get it in a way that's going to give his team an advantageous opportunity to win that second ball. I mean, he's
Mhm.
just a physical presence in the way that none of our other strikers are in this discussion. His hold up play, his strength, he can do those things. That's really his job for Union Berlin, is to hold up the play for Becker, who's the speedy striker who's gotten all the goals right now in the Bundesliga. I don't know if he's still the leading scorer in the Bundesliga, but he was. But Pefok can offer that in a way and at a level that just none of the other players in the pool can at the moment. And he's scoring at a high level. So those are the big pros for Jordan Pefok. Is there anything that I left off from that list?
Um, Not really. I think you really hit the nail on the head there with his physical presence. I mean, there's a quote from, to borrow from another sport, but Joe Burrow once said about Jamar Chase, he wasn't even looking. He just chucks it up and goes, "Screw it, Jamar's down there somewhere." I can see that very much happening in the World Cup, where Weston or somebody just throws a cross in there and says, "Screw it, Pefok's in down there somewhere." I mean, there are very few people in the world who are just as commanding a presence in the box, and you made the comment about his hold up play. We saw that this week when he had an assist. I mean, he was with his back to goal and then lays it off perfectly. And I think it was who I can't remember who scored it, but I was too excited that Pefok was on the score sheet. But I mean, just he has a very specific skill set.
Yeah,
that will be needed at some point in the World Cup.
I think that's another pro, is that he has a skill set that is really undefendable. I guess, like, we saw Jesus Ferreira against Japan, where the system wasn't working, things weren't working, and therefore just everything fell apart. In times like those, there's never a situation where you can't chuck it up to Jordan Pefok and he's going to have a chance, right? That will always be an option. There's never going to be a moment where you can't chuck a ball into a box, even if he's got two defenders on him, and not trust Pefok to just get a piece of it, maybe make something happen. I mean, that's always going to be on the table. So he is a human style of play. He's just a built-in style of play that I don't think any of our other strikers can really touch in that way. Now, I think as we get into the cons, it's not exactly the style of play that Berhalter wants to play, and if we're honest, probably doesn't really fit in with what the way some of the other guys on the field want to play. So let's get into it. He's not going to press, which I think is the main issue that Greg Berhalter has with Pefok. Greg, at least up until the last two games where the U.S. didn't press, Greg has talked relentlessly about the press. He mentioned to Hurt Gomez that was the biggest strength that the team has. I cannot believe we didn't press in the last two games. I think that there are some reasons for it, but it was still a huge surprise. So the fact that Jordan doesn't press, I think, is a big knock against him in Greg Berhalter's eyes. He's not going to offer you much combination play. He's not going to get involved. He's not going to drop in and try to create things in the buildup. He's not going to be playing nice 1-2s with Serginho Dest or anything like that. You're not going to get that from him. He's going to park himself between the two center backs and just wait for you to throw balls at him. And then the last thing is his movement, his runs in behind, they're not very dynamic. He's not going to be looking to get in behind with his movement. He's not going to be creating space in the box, anything like that. He's going to be looking to get to that back post, looking to win headers. That's his game. Thank you very much. That's what he's here to do, and he's doing it very effectively in the Bundesliga right now.
Yeah, and I see everything you're saying with the cons, but I think the argument, the counter argument is a very simple one. Who cares? There's gonna be he's a situational player. He's the Hail Mary guy that you're gonna need at some point. We can try and we can press, and yes, he does not do that well. But we need a guy who's going to play with his back to goal and win headers, and that's him. And he's doing it at such a great rate. It's such an undeniable rate. And Greg has made comments about, we know what he brings. And I think you and I are saying the exact same thing. And I think we're kind of proving Greg's point. We know what he brings to the table. And he said something similar about John Brooks, but there's a lot of other things with the John Brooks situation. Everyone, when he said that, I was like, oh, he's writing him off. I don't think it means the same thing with Pefok. I think he knows that he's gonna have a situation exactly like he did in the Nations League. I mean, that sent us through to the final, and he knows there's going to be a situation like that, whether it's against Iran in the 80th minute, where you send on Pefok and you go, let's try, let's chuck it up and put it in there. I think there are those cons, and the cons are pretty glaring and obvious. I mean, the guy does not press. But you're not putting him into press. You're not bringing him to press. I think even though he was left off this last camp, Greg said, we know what he brings. I'm pretty sure he's in seat 7C on the plane to Qatar.
But I hope so, man. I really hope so. I mean, I don't want to make this a big Berhalter discussion, but the big overarching knock against Greg Berhalter is his commitment to his ideology and his commitment to his style of play, and not looking to differ from that all that much. And it feels like there are times when Greg gets very arrogant with his style of play and believing that it's going to overcome everything. And the big fear that I have is we saw that with his refusing to select Pefok in this last window. And I really hope that he got humbled a little bit and understands that there are going to be moments where having this guy on the bench to bring him in is just, it's something that I can't believe we would want to leave at home. I mean, you look at, we can talk about his pressing, and you're right. He's not going to, we can talk about that, but I think pressing is one of those things that's very game state dependent. If we're in a situation against either Iran or Wales, where maybe they're defending a tie or maybe they're defending a lead or something like that, they're going to be sitting back. They're not going to press. I think we saw in the game in the summer against El Salvador, where the U.S. really needed a goal, and El Salvador just played, 11 men behind the ball and just absorb pressure. And remember how we got that goal. It was Luca de la Torre putting a chip into Jordan Morris on the back corner, and Jordan Morris actually won. I think he won 2 headers in that sequence, and one of them ultimately was the goal.
Yeah, the other one should have been a red card, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, he got knocked off the ball. Yeah. Anyway, so Jordan Morris served as that guy who's big and strong and can win headers in a team where we don't have a lot of that. And all due respect to Jordan Morris, he is not Jordan Pefok. Jordan Pefok is just a different animal at that position. I don't know how we don't bring that guy. But as I said in the beginning, I don't really want to make judgments. I just kind of want to deliver pros and cons for this group. Is there any other thing that we kind of missed in this striker discussion so far?
Well, I don't think in the striker discussion, but one thing you mentioned about the system when just something I thought about going back to the Nations League, not the semifinal where Pefok scored, but the final. We have the guys now who have the ability to play pretty and play out the back and be really connected. But in that Nations League final, we played like a U.S. men's national team from the 90s with a lot of grit, and our goals all came off of set pieces and on aerial headers. The Weston McKennie goal. There will be a time where we do have to play like that. And if you look at the strikers of the past, I'm thinking of a guy like Josie Altidore, who was great in the air and a really big physical presence. You need somebody like that. I mean, I'm not saying Pefok has all the attributes that Josie did when Josie was in his prime, but you're going to need that big physical presence in the box. I don't think Greg is, I don't want to say arrogant enough or cocky enough in the system to, on the world's biggest stage, when you're at risk of not going through, to try everything. And I think Jordan Pefok is that try everything guy. I think when he's looking down the barrel of crap, we're about to get knocked out, fire everything, put Pefok in there, just chuck it up. Let's just try and get a goal. I don't think he's going to be looking at the 80th minute against Iran and say, yeah, but we really could play pretty out of this one. No, you're going to freak out and you're going to go, we need a goal, man.
The hope is that Greg really got humbled. Depending on how he was looking at this, maybe he really does, already know what Pefok brings, and this was just an opportunity to see Pepi and Sargent, whatever, and Pefok's a lock. I don't know. I don't think that's the case, but hopefully Greg understands that, man. Leaving this guy at home is a difficult thing to do as the manager. Now, I highlighted Felix Santos's comment. Felix is a member. Felix actually called into the show once. Shout out, Felix. Fact of the matter is we don't generate a lot of chances, and our CB situation is a hot mess. I hate to say it, but I think this World Cup will be a 3 and out, but a valuable experience for 2026. I want to talk about the first part of this comment. The fact of the matter is we don't generate a lot of chances. And I think, boy, the bulk of our striker issues, I think the bulk of our goal scoring issues come down to us just not generating a lot of chances. And there are many reasons for that. But I think one of the big ones throughout World Cup qualifying was just not having a healthy and consistent and top form Gio Reyna, and
Mhm.
not having a healthy and consistent and top form Christian Pulisic. I think there were many situations. I tell you, once a week, at least once a week, I think about Christian Pulisic's one-on-one versus Alistair Johnson against Canada, where he was not able to beat him. I think about that all the time. I mean, Christian Pulisic is a player that when he is in form, a player like Alistair Johnson is not even a blip on the radar. He is going to skate past that guy like he's not even there. There were so many situations in World Cup qualifying where I felt like Christian had what he needed. He had the one-on-one situation. He just wasn't able to do it, man. And so many of our issues would be remedied if we were just creating more chances, had more opportunities. And right now, there is some hope. There is some hope. And that hope came a few hours ago in some games where these two guys, Christian Pulisic and Gio Reyna, showed that, man, maybe they're going to be informed. Maybe they're going to win some of these one-on-ones. Maybe they
So you're saying there's a chance.
like Bierman says, you can't beat Alistair Johnson. You can only hope to contain him.
Oh God.
Oh gosh, I think about that one-on-one all the time. There were a couple in that game, but there was one where, oh man, we had everything we wanted with Pulisic isolated against that guy, and he wasn't able to beat him, and it gives me nightmares. But we talked about it at the beginning of the show. Pulisic looked electric today. He was beating players. He was getting to the end line, looking for shots. He was cutting back on his left foot and playing balls to feet. He was looking for the shot himself. He was doing near post deliveries. He was doing far post deliveries. He was picking up the ball and driving at defenders around the end line. He was not around the midline. He was doing it around the end line. He was doing all the things that we usually see from Christian Pulisic, and is this going to continue? Are we going to see this guy in November?
I think we will. I think Graham Potter said something really interesting in the midweek. He was talking about, he was asked about Pulisic, and he said he's doing all the right things and he's pushing for starting minutes, which, I mean, back up the talk there, Graham, please. But I think with this under Graham Potter, you're seeing a resurgence of Christian Pulisic because he's in a new situation.
You're seeing a resurgence of the Chelsea attack. I mean,
Yes.
they're all playing better.
Absolutely. I mean, Mason Mount had a brace the other day. I mean, Mason Mount was did not exist for Chelsea for under Thomas Tuchel, and we can take the good and the bad with that because we're going to have to play him on Black Friday. But I Christian is such a confidence player, and Jermaine Jones was asked on the In Soccer We Trust podcast about Christian, and he was talking about how when Jermaine was still on the team, it was their job to protect Christian and just let him go do his thing. And I don't think I think in World Cup qualifying there wasn't any protection. There wasn't any. There wasn't an enforcer around Christian to go let him do his thing. And I think we're seeing some guys start to round into that. I think the one that comes to my mind is Tyler Adams having that kind of chip on his shoulder, the you don't know where I'm from, dog, to borrow a phrase from Clint Dempsey. I think the situation around Christian has to be right. And once that situation is right, look out because he's scary.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from just the age of the players, the confidence they have in one another, the amount of time they've been playing together, leadership and experience were the big buzzwords coming into World Cup qualifying. And I think a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned, I think come down to leadership and experience. In the previous World Cup cycle, Christian didn't have to worry about any of that. There was a lot of built-in leadership. There was a hierarchy on the team. He could just go out there and play. In this World Cup cycle, everything was on him. And he was battling injuries, and he was battling form, and he was having issues at his club. And I think all that manifested on the field. But it's incredible what can happen whenever you just have a new face, a new voice in the locker room. And I think Christian Pulisic's benefiting from that right now. Mason Mount's benefiting from that right now. I think all the players at Chelsea are benefiting from that right now. It's good to see. Let's see. BMR209 says, I dream about Pulisic's goal against Man City and Project Restart all the time. I mean, the Man City
Don't
goal,
we
the
all?
Liverpool.
The best part of that Liverpool goal was because they were losing. Liverpool was going to win that game, but he did that against Liverpool. It was the Mr. Miyagi nod from Jurgen Klopp on the touchline. It was just the yes. That was the best part.
I want to pull up Mr. XLR.
Yes, this is a great question.
This is a solid question. It's a good addendum to the conversation, as Brett said. Hi, Sam. Love the channel. Thanks, man. Popping in for a quick question after a long day. What are the odds of the USA getting Ferreira and Balogun, or is he worth going after? Thanks. Is he worth going after? Well, I think considering the issues that we're having at the striker position, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a player that seems to be in form, seems to be scoring goals. Is he? What are the odds of him getting called in? I mean, nobody can know this for sure. Just my read on the situation. I'm assuming, considering who Greg Berhalter is and what his tenure has been for this national team, Greg's ability to recruit players and to always be talking, looking to expand the pool, always be in the ear of the top prospects. I'm assuming that Greg has had conversations with Ferreira, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I've heard it pronounced different ways. Do you know how to pronounce it?
Yeah. Arsenal fans call him Flo.
Yeah, let's call him Flo. Yeah, so Flo, I mean, he's absolutely a player worth going after. He was discussed at the top of World Cup qualifying. I am sure the subject has been broached, but I think he's a guy that wants to play for England. I know he put out a statement recently where he kind of kept the door open for the USA, but it sounded like he wants to play for England. I have a feeling if he was going to switch, it would have been already in order to get an opportunity to earn a World Cup. I mean, there was opportunities there where he could have come in for friendlies or anything like that. He could have come and gotten integrated, but I don't think that he plans on playing with the U.S. men's national team unless there comes a time where it's clear that he's never going to play for England, which is absolutely possible because, I mean, that country produces incredible talent, incredible top level talent. Even, I mean, someone like Tammy Abraham, who's was scoring goals for Chelsea. Now he's at Roma. I mean, that kind of player would be one of the top strikers that the USA has ever produced, but he's not able to see the field for Chelsea. So Flo has a long road ahead of him. So I would say for this cycle, no chance at all. Potentially, if it comes a time where it's clear that he's never going to play for England, then potentially he could play for the USA. But it doesn't seem like that's his main goal right now.
So from what I've heard from people I trust, is that there definitely were conversations and it was close at a few points. I can't tell you the number of times I've texted a friend of mine who's a very big Arsenal fan whenever Balogun he was in Brooklyn recently and he on his Instagram, he just posted home with an American flag emoji. I texted that to my friend immediately. I was like, oh my God, it's happening. It's finally happening. I do know that that there definitely were conversations in regards to is he worth going after? I mean, I'm pretty sure he's tied with Neymar atop Ligue 1 for the scoring title. I may be wrong on that, but at least at one point in the season he was. I think that there may have had to, for him to have switched for this cycle, I think it had to have happened months ago. And I think there would have needed to be a promise. And that's something that Greg has never done, is promise a guy who's a due national, hey, I promise I'll take you to Qatar. And I think that's something that may have needed to happen. Again, that's just my own speculation. The only thing I do kind of know that happened was there were conversations. I think this is someone who doesn't really stand a chance of this cycle or next cycle being called in for England, because as long as Harry Kane and Tammy Abraham are up there, unless he just takes a massive leap, I don't think he's going to get called in. So I do think that there is a possibility of him switching to the U.S. in the future. I was listening to the Orange Slices podcast a while ago, and Heath Pierce, it was either Heath Pierce or Mark McKenzie, asked Yunus Musa, who came up in the Arsenal system with Balogun. He was asked about him, and Musa's initial response was, "Oh, he's a London boy." Like he definitely feels English. But I mean, there's always hope you can hold on to. I mean, he did leave the door open a bit, saying, "But there is part of me that is from New York." I mean, he was born in Brooklyn. He has family in Brooklyn. I will go knock on his family's door and say, "Hey, can I cook you dinner? What would you like?" to try and influence him, put the full court press on. But if he feels English in his heart, I think that's going to be hard to move. But hey, we can hope.
Yeah, I think it's like a Jermaine Jones situation, where Jermaine Jones,
That's
later
what
on
I
in his
want for
career,
Germany.
it was clear that he wasn't going to play for Germany. He was still a dynamic midfielder for Schalke, and he made that switch and was a solid. I say solid, a really good midfielder for the U.S. men's national team for the rest of
And
his
now he's
career.
what? Are you 17 coach? He's in the youth system somehow.
He's an absolute character, man.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters of all the U.S. men's national team former players.
Mhm.
I think this is a good place to move on to another discussion that I think is really interesting. This World Cup, I mean, it's a weird World Cup, man. It comes in the fall.
Mhm.
There's so many other things going on right now. It seems like the build up and the attention to the World Cup is getting lost in the shuffle because all the places where you normally would be getting hyped up for the World Cup are also covering the EPL, are also covering the La Liga, UEFA Champions League, maybe MLS playoffs, whatever. It's kind of getting lost in the shuffle. And then football in America just overarches absolutely everything. The NBA is starting up. We're hitting the playoffs for Major League Baseball. I mean, it's holiday season. It's just there's so much schools in session. There's so much going on as opposed to whenever the tournament's in the middle of the summer. That's whenever everybody's attention is on it. So it seems like already this tournament is coming in lacking a little bit of sizzle. There is the thing hanging over all of this, which is that people aren't really cool with how things have gone down in Qatar, how Qatar ended up with the bid, how the stadium came together, some of the rules and regulations in that country, some of the human rights issues with their own citizens, with other citizens, with the workers that they brought in. There's a lot of problematic things there. And then to put the icing on the cake, we have how the U.S. performed in the friendlies heading in. We have the feelings about Greg Berhalter. We have some of the drop in form. Christian Pulisic not playing for Chelsea. Weston McKennie not really up to the same level that he was prior. I mean, a lot of the sizzle has kind of come out of this team, and it's pretty incredible. I think this World Cup, as soon as it ends, people are going to be looking forward to 2026. It really feels like more and more like this is a ramp up tournament for 2026. I don't know. How are you feeling about this tournament as we get closer and closer to it?
Well, you and I are both soccer geeks, so we've been looking forward to it forever. But I mean, it definitely feels a little flat. I mean, I remember in the build up to Brazil, there was a documentary for a month straight leading up to the World Cup that I was on my couch for every time. Just
Yeah.
it was going through. It was I remember because it was presented by El Jimador Tequila and it was narrated by one of the guys from 30 Rock. And I mean, it was must see viewing, and there were going to be watch party. I mean, the watch parties in Chicago were bonkers. And it was amazing. I mean, you're not going to have that on Black Friday. It's going to be way too damn cold in pretty much everywhere. So I do feel like there is a lot of, I mean, NFL is king. It's always it's going to be that way for a long time. And I don't think we should look at this as I do think it is a ramp up to 2026, but I don't think we should necessarily view that as a bad thing. Because I mean, if you give the fans. I mean, Fox is branding that week as the greatest week in sports history because they have Thanksgiving football, which
Yeah, I
is
think Michigan and Ohio State play either
Ohio
that day
State,
or the day
Michigan
after.
comes the day after, and then there's a big NFL game on Sunday. But sandwiched right in there, when all the Black Friday sales will be over, is USA England, and if they can show well, I think it will spark enough excitement about our boys. And if they can squeak out of the group, which I do think they should do, I think there will be that appointment viewing for their next game. As long as it's not on a Saturday or a Sunday, because it's going to be, if the broadcast people were smart. I do not work for that company, but if they were smart, they should treat this like March Madness, because everybody during March Madness has a laptop up at their office. And I remember a few years ago, there was a bosses coming button. If you press like F5, it would pull up a spreadsheet. Everybody needs to.
I remember that.
Yes, they need to treat it like that. They need to have this on in their office. They need to treat it like a proper tournament that it is. And I think it'll ramp up that excitement. And if they can have moments that you can put on SportsCenter, if you put on Twitter, if you have those moments, it'll get people excited for 2026. And I think that is the big goal. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, you're right. I think that first game for Wales is just so important. I mean, the game against England is going to be going to be huge because of the history of the USA and England and all that. I mean, England's going to be bringing the star power, but yeah, that first game against Wales is really going to set the tone because if the US comes out and they play well and they get a win, that's really going to increase the likelihood that they move on to the next round. That's huge. It's just, man, this whole buildup, I was really looking forward to the greater sports culture in the United States. So many non-soccer fans getting introduced to the game, getting introduced to these players, and these guys really becoming stars in this country as they deserve to be. These guys, Weston McKennie is just an incredible. He'd be an incredible spokesperson, incredible just pop culture phenomenon. Like Weston McKennie should be dating a pop star right now in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. If these guys can get on, the talk shows and get on a guest star on whatever sitcom, that will do wonders for our game. If they can get a Gillette commercial. I mean, if I'm these guys' agents, I'm saying, buddy boy, if you show out, if you score a great goal in this tournament, I'm getting you a razor deal. I'm getting you a deodorant deal, a car deal. You will be a household name in the States, because a lot of these guys aren't household names in the States unless you're paying attention, which there is a very much growing. I mean, I get work emails about how much how much the sport is growing, but they're still lacking that. I mean, you look at Pawn Stars, the LeBron James of soccer. We all made fun of that because it's not necessarily true. Yeah. But everybody, if you mention Christian Pulisic's name to a person who isn't following soccer, they'll go, "Oh yeah, I know that guy."
No, he's the one. He's the only one. He's the only player that anybody knows.
And yet we have guys who are studs at Dortmund, at Juventus. I mean, not so much recently, but he was at one point. He can get back there. I digress. But we have guys at these big clubs and who are proper. I mean, it's not. I mean, far be it from me to say who is American, who isn't. But in the 2014 Brazil cycle, there were guys who were coming from other federations and just kind of felt like they were doing it to play in a World Cup. These guys, all of them, every single one of them, no matter whether or not they're a dual nat or whatever, they love this crest and they love where they're from. And if you have guys like that who are young, who are exciting, who are, I mean, this counts, they're handsome young dudes. These guys can be household names, and that will go a long way to growing the sport in our country.
I don't know how much U.S. men's national team history everybody out there is familiar with, but really the modern U.S. men's national team got started whenever the U.S. got the opportunity to host the 1994 World Cup. Prior to that, the U.S. hadn't played in a World Cup in many years. Because of that, U.S. soccer rounded up all the top players that they could find and had them start preparing for the 1990 cycle. The 1990 cycle was supposed to prepare the team and launch towards 1994. Now, remarkably, in a turn of events that nobody really expected, the U.S. actually qualified for the 1990 World Cup. And we had a young group of players that were like semi-professional players, college players.
There was no professional league. MLS was 2 years off being started.
Yeah, a ragtag group of guys. More than that, this was 1990, so more than that.
I was
A
talking about
ragtag
94.
group of
94
guys
was still 2 years off being started.
came together and went to the World Cup and got canned. I mean, it was it was I think they went 3 and out. I don't know if they scored a goal. I don't recall. It was BMR says Paul Caligiuri. If you ever hear reference to the shot heard around the world in US soccer, they're referring to Paul Caligiuri scoring a game-winning goal or maybe whatever game-tying goal that sent the US to the World Cup in 1990. It was incredible. No one was expecting it. They really started up the federation to build towards 1994, and they made the tournament in 1990. And this young group went out and they got their butts handed to them. But it really led the way, started the path, started the journey to 1994. Everything was geared up towards 1994. And I feel a lot of that same energy right now as it pertains to 2026. With this World Cup being so damn screwy, it feels like more and more that's the one that we're geared towards. I know that's like, there's part of me that's like, this is really crappy to say, this should be the moment, like forget about that, like, you're making excuses, whatever. I think it's the reality. I think the day after the 2022 World Cup, we're going to be looking towards that one. I just see a lot of similarities there. That's just kind of how I'm feeling right now.
I think there are two ways that you can look at that. I think, yes, it is inevitable that after this World Cup will be going, all right, 2026. And there's two ways that can go. We either just got bounced 3 games and you're out going, all right, 2026. Or they get out of the group, they win a game, they show well, they show heart, they show fight, and we're going, 2026 could be our year. I don't know. It's anybody's guess. If it's the team that showed up in this last window, it's definitely going to be the former rather than the latter. But I don't know if it's the team that showed up in the Nations League against Mexico and just were scrappers and fought for the badge and were shushing the crowd and ready to go. I think it could be the 2026, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely possible in 2022. I mean, we need a lot of things to fall our way. We need a lot of players healthy. We need them playing their best soccer, just straight up. Like, they have to be playing their best soccer. We got to have, hopefully, Greg was humbled a lot in the last 2 games, and we see a little bit more pragmatism from him. And if Jesus is creating a lot of opportunities, if one of these damn balls goes in the back of the net at some point, that would be great for the U.S. men's national team because, quietly throughout World Cup qualifying, I see Star Wars Satan here. What a name, Star Wars Satan. He says Greg does not preach defense. He preaches offense. Quietly, Greg Berhalter's teams have been really good at defense. The U.S. just hasn't given up a lot of goals. I think they had the least goals against throughout World Cup qualifying. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. And even in the summer, I mean, they didn't give up any goals against Morocco. They didn't give up any goals against Uruguay. In the Gold Cup, I mean, they were led by Matt Turner. Matt Turner is a goalkeeper with the ability to keep shots out of the back of the net in a really remarkable way. And whenever you have a guy who can do that, you can go pretty far. The defense has been consistently good for the U.S. men's national team. It's just about scoring goals. If they can find goals somehow, some way, if Christian Pulisic can beat Alistair Johnson in his one-on-one, if the one time Jesus Ferreira's shot goes in the back of the net is against England or is in against Wales, if Gio Reyna's in the game and he's creating opportunities, if we get Weston McKennie back to his Weston McKennie pre-injury self and he's winning set pieces and putting balls in the back of the net, I mean, it can definitely happen, man. And we can definitely create those moments, create that buzz, and really get us excited as we head towards 2026, which I really think is going to be the biggest World Cup in the U.S. men's national team history, maybe at least since 1994. But it's definitely there, right? It's definitely there.
I do. And I was thinking about something the other day. When I was most excited for this young group of guys was in lockdown, when I was seeing them do these amazing things in lockdown. And yes, the stadiums are going to be full and there's going to be a million eyeballs but in kind of a close knit environment, in for lack of a better term, a bubble, when these guys are going to be moving around together, eat, sleep, breathe, doing everything together. I think when there's nothing else but football to focus on, I think these guys have absolutely thrived. I mean, they're young dudes. I mean, obviously.
You're the one who said in the biggest moments is when they've come up the biggest, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Those moments were in the Champions League, and those moments were in the Nations League final. And those were, and you look at the Nations League, that was a longer buildup when they were closer together for a longer period of time, kind of shut off from the world. I think that this could play into our hands where Greg kind of has, I mean, kind of, I hate to say this, but kind of treats it like a college team, like a college football team. You know, you have your guys regimented, you have them, kind of dialed in the way you want them. I think that really could benefit us.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, the game against Mexico at home, the game against Mexico away for the U.S. were some of the better games of the cycle. Those were the games where, the players really got up for it, and we really expecting them to do that at the World Cup. I mean, they have to if they have a pulse. I mean, Blake Foster says everyone coming into form at the right time, question mark, possibly. Hope
Healthy.
so.
Healthy,
Hope
I
so.
think, is the most important thing. I mean, form, great, but healthy, most necessary. I mean, critical.
I think that's as good a place as any to stop. I think we've been through it right now. I really feel like the energy is starting to pick up in the fan base. I thought it really fell off in the right after those two friendlies, but it seems like it's starting to come back a little bit. We're only a few weeks away from the World Cup. Things are starting to look good, starting to look optimistic. Brad, do you have any closing thoughts as we kind of wrap this thing up?
I have one closing thought. And after that last window, I was feeling down until we needed something magical to bring us all together. And that magic came in the form of Santa Claus. Santa Claus played by John Hamm. And boy, was that a joyous commercial. And it just ended with but what if our boys win it? And it was the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with Christian Pulisic, a big balloon. I could probably see it from my house. I live just outside Manhattan. Yes, get me fired up, Santa Claus played by John Hamm. I'm ready to go. We can do this.
Amen. Amen. That commercial was phenomenal. I got fired up watching that as well.
Yeah.
Pulisic's looking good. Gio's looking good. There's a lot of players scoring goals.
Tim Weah. How did we not talk about Tim Weah getting
Tim Weah's back. Yunus Musa's back. I mean, the boys are coming back together.
I will say kudos to us. We went an hour and 17 minutes and we didn't mention Aaron Long once.
True. Yeah. Maybe the next video is a center back video, but that's pretty depressing.
Yeah.
Group of guys to look at.
We'll make it another cocktail hour.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the comment section. I wasn't able to do phone calls tonight because I forgot the mixer at my office, because it's just been an absolutely crazy 2 weeks at my office. And it's been difficult to kind of peel myself away and do content, but I'm excited that we got to hang out tonight and talk about soccer. So thank you for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for hanging out with us along the way. Thank you for following on Twitter. Thank you to Brad for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you to all the members. I saw Felix Santos in here tonight hanging out. If you want to directly support the channel, you can absolutely become a member. So shout out to all my tier 2 members. And I saw Matthew Hanna left me a comment saying that I called him Christopher Hanna, which my bad. I was trying to do it off of memory. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report brought to you by Bet Online. Have a good night.